Perfect. Hey everybody, Dave Whitmarsh here. We're gonna another podcast we're gonna do with somebody that, wow, I don't even want to put a date on that. Maybe 15 years. I think that ages both of us to some
We both
degree.
started when we were 10.
That's right. Yeah. So I met Michael. He was I'm not sure your official title back then, but you were barely in the country. I think you lived on an airplane. You worked for a deco, and you handled their RPO business.
Yeah.
And so
Correct.
from there, we haven't stayed in touch quite as much as we probably should have. But Michael was really helpful for me to understand the RPO space. And as I took on a certification process in that, sort of led me through and was responsible for much of my knowledge there. And so here we are. Wow, 15 years later. So
yeah, I think your memory serves you correctly. I was on the road about 130 days a year, and probably 50 of those I was out of the country, so about half the time. And I did oversee a global business. So, it seems like a lot, but, if you go to like China once, you go to Australia once, you go to Singapore twice, you go to Zurich 4 times, you go to London 3 times, right? It doesn't seem like a lot, but when you go to like the different countries, you realize like, wow, once or twice a month, I'm going to some international location. Yeah. Not the sidetrack, but a really funny joke. I accidentally flew back to the wrong airport one time, and I got in this hilarious argument with the security guys because they said that my car's not there because I never went there. And I'm like, okay, this has got to be a candid camera, right? I'm like, I do this every week. Of course I came here. What do you mean you're not here? I'm like, somebody stole my car and y'all just trying to not to be responsible for it. But he was absolutely right. I used to reroute my travel so much that I left from one airport not thinking and flew back to a different airport. That's when you know you've traveled too much, when you accidentally fly home to the wrong airport.
Well, I know of a guy, Matt Van Buren, that used to have in his desk drawer in his office, he had a stack of dry cleaned dress shirts. And so when he came in from all the flights, he'd just like pull one out and away you go. And, truthfully, that's just not a way to live, right?
Yeah, I mean, you don't notice it, but after a while, when you begin to reflect, it's like, what the heck? When you start to know the flight attendants by first name basis, it's like a rough life, right?
Yeah.
And COVID changed all that. So like, that's not like a thing that much anymore. But I think we were all going fast and furious right up until 2019.
Yeah. So you had how many years in the recruitment space, Michael?
I'll give you the quick journey. It's really funny. I went to school for computer engineering. I thought I was going to wear a white suit and make chips, like the Intel guys, right? All my friends went to work at Motorola and IBM, and I accidentally got into recruiting and staffing. My brother-in-law worked at Lucent. He was a contractor, and he gave my CV to the staffing agency. Now I'm really going to date myself. They used to interview people. This is the day where staffing agencies, before they farmed you out, they would actually meet you in person. So I went in for an interview. They're like, hey, have you thought about like selling staffing? Because you're technical and you got pretty good people skills. And I said, sure, what the heck, I'll try it. I was young. So I accidentally got into recruiting and staffing in an IT staffing context back in the mid-90s. And I really fell in love with it ever since. And since then, I've done like lots of interesting things in HR and recruiting. But I kind of got into the industry by accident, if that makes sense.
Yeah, me too, actually. So,
Um,
yeah. So how long has has Claro been up and rolling? And tell us a bit about it.
we started the company in 2014. I think the incorporation date is like May 14th or something there, or May 19th. So that's when the company was actually incorporated and founded. We were building the tech for several years. I'm very humble and I joke is like I grossly underestimated the complexity. One of the things that I realize in hindsight when you work at a company, and I was a buyer of tech, we probably managed $2 million of HR tech, right? And when I was at Adecco, just various tools, video interviewing, ATS, CRM, whatever, right down the line. And you always kind of find faults in what all the products do, right? And then us business services guys, you would do PowerPoints, and my joke is like, everything works amazing in PowerPoint. All systems work, everything is flawless, the processes are great. When you do it in real life, it's a little different, right? And so it's like, how hard could it be? So my humble joke is like, we grossly underestimated the complexity of what we're doing. We essentially set up to what today is called a labor market intelligence tool. We set out to build one. At the time, I didn't have a name for it. I wanted to build Bloomberg for people, right? So I'm like, Bloomberg for HR, man. We had a bunch of clients in financial services. So I kind of learned about the Bloomberg terminal at the time. I'm like, why is there like no Bloomberg for HR? That would be like amazing. So I'm like, I think I'm going to build one. So this is kind of like the childish thing. Fast forward, we launched our like MVP at HR Tech at the end of 2018. So it took us a solid 3.5 years to, build enough features and functions to cobble together like a minimally viable product. We launched the Claro brand then to kind of soft. It was well received. And then I would say by January, February 2019, we launched like our first commercial version of the product, which is basically what people buy today. So we were probably a solid 4 years in development. Again, grossly underestimated the complexity. In hindsight, I mean, there's only like 3 or 4 companies that do what we do, and they're much bigger. There's a reason. When you think about like a chatbot, there's thousands, right? When you think about like this assessment companies, there are thousands. Background checking companies, thousands, right? CRMs, thousands. Why? Because they're like really easy to make. When you think about what we do, there's 4, right? It's been a long time. So it's like, that's why I joke, I grossly underestimate complexity. So we've been in market for, we've been, as a company around for about 8 years. So we've been in market for really going on our 3rd full year, with an asterisk of, 2020 was basically a COVID year. So it's kind of like weird. But this is kind of like our journey today. There's only a handful of companies that do what we do. There's a company called MC Burning Glass. It's kind of in our space. There's Gartner has a product called Talent Neuron. LinkedIn has a product called LinkedIn Talent Insights. And then there's Claro. So there's only really like 4 companies that kind of do what we do at a kind of global, credible scale. So it's kind of been our journey.
And so what is it that you do?
Yeah, in simple terms, we essentially provide companies insights about the labor market, like who's hiring, how much they're paying. They can do things like talent location strategies. Like COVID really changed a lot of stuff in the last couple of years, where the world kind of woke up and like, hey, we could hire people anywhere. And I'm speaking in 5th grade language on purpose, right? This isn't that complicated, right? We can hire people anywhere. Where should we hire people? We could put up, distribution centers anywhere. Where should we put our distribution centers? Right? This kind of stuff. So, geolocation, talent location really turned on like a different thing. The other thing is that with the pandemic, you couldn't really look over your neighbor's yard anymore, right? Because like there were big ass fences. Pardon my bluntness, right? So you kind of needed to figure out like, what are your competitors doing? And so companies kind of woke up and said, wow, we have lots of data. We're very insular. We have lots of data about what's happening in our company. We know nothing about what's happening outside of our company. So Claro essentially provides them insights about what's happening outside of the 4 walls, like, who's hiring data engineers, where they're hiring them, how much are they paying, and, what does the diversity look like of my competitors, and, what skills are trending and growing. So think of us like as Bloomberg for human resources, this kind of an idea.
Yeah. So, well, sorry I didn't talk to you 5 years ago. I would have told you that pulling this data from all these sources and finding it would have been really hard.
No,
So,
yeah, it's like, well, it's like, pride comes before destruction, right? Something like that. Is that how it goes? Pride
right.
falls before destruction comes. Anyway, luckily we didn't go down that path, but it's very complicated. Let me put a caveat there. It's very complicated to do it legally and ethically. That's
Mm,
the complicated part, right? You see every week or every couple of weeks, once a month, somebody gets sued for this and somebody violates that. I think what happens is in a vacuum, it's really easy to build something that works on a laptop and a couple of servers and take shortcuts. But in the world of big data, that's really not sustainable. So the complexity comes from global scale, and make sure you're compliant with like data privacy laws and all that kind of stuff, right? This is what makes it really, really complicated. Can two guys in college build a little scraper that scrapes? Of course they can. It's like really easy. Can you do it at 114 countries? Can you do 40 million pages a day? That's like a very different problem, right?
mm,
So it's very, very complicated. This is where I really began to admire what Google has done and being able to spider, billions of pages. The
mm,
scale of that, I grossly underestimated. Just, this is my humble admission.
yeah. So, yeah, well, I don't even think I could begin to wrap my head around what that would look like. So congratulations for even taking it
Right.
on. Right. So
Mm.
so let's run a scenario then.
Sure.
So I have a really big company and I'm looking to do what? Run me through a scenario of how or
Yeah,
what
I
you
can run you
guys
through
would do that would make
how some
sense.
of our clients use it. The use cases are simple, but it's like hyperbolic. They're simple yet super high value, right? So don't mistake the simplicity with the lack of value. Like for example, one of our clients, and we actually did a press release on this, is XPO Logistics. Like you see the trucks on the road.
Mhm,
Um, they use our product to do strategic workforce planning. So like, where should we hire forklift drivers and warehouse workers, et cetera? If we're going to build a hub and spoke model, what market can we go where there is an interesting equation of a lot of talent, not a lot of demand for the talent, and the wage is aligned with our cost model. So you
mhm,
think about this as a three-dimensional equation, which is that market. And they recently, Midwest year, won a deal with Apple for $100 million to build a logistics and distribution facility in Clayton, Indiana. They use our product for that because they're like, oh, in Clayton, we could hire people, we could be the employer of choice based on these skill sets, based on these wages. And so they'll operate, $100 million facility for Apple, and they would use our product to figure out, where they should build that facility. And this is like practical, but if you think about it, when you're hiring 500 people in the market, let's say you get the wage wrong by a quarter an hour, dude. That's like a big number.
yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying? That's the difference
Um,
between like winning and losing a deal. So while the problem statement is simple, there are very few solutions that could give you real-time data. I was just talking to one of our clients, and they're like, we just had this realization, or the reason why our college program doesn't work is because all this data is from 2015 and 2017. I'm like, well, I could have told you that.
mm,
Because if you're relying on like the BLS or NCS or these various services, like for example, if you're looking for diversity data, perfect example, a lot of clients want to, figure out how to improve D&I hiring, like stuff like that, right? Uh, the BLS just published 2018 data. So like, let's say you were going to use the most recent BLS data, the best, it's 4 years old. And
okay.
the world of HR, 4 years, it might as well be 40, right? It's
Yeah.
like not valuable. So the use case for like the XPO is not the fact that they get like salary insights from Claro. It's salary insights today, not 3 years ago, not
Mm,
household survey based on 4,500 people in some random places. Does that make sense? This is the real value. So this is one use case. Another use case would be like around attrition modeling. This the whole great resignation thing, great whatever you want to call it. At the end of the day, churn is up, and companies want to retain people. And so the ability to figure out who may be a passive job seeker, what percentage of our demographic is at risk for leaving, how does that compare with people in my city, my county, my industry, whatever. It allows companies to say, like, hey, if 5% of our people are looking for work, but 9% of our competitors, we're doing pretty good. Even though it sucks, we're still doing pretty good. But if
Right.
like 12% of our people are looking for work and 3% of our competitors, then we have like a problem. So these are kind of like real world use cases that have a significant amount of value attributed to them, if this helps.
No, that's brilliant. Yeah. And so, truthfully, most decisions should be made off of data,
Yeah.
right? And so if you can have data sources that are current and you can model, then all the power to you, right? Like it's funny because I would thinking, as you said, that there's probably a bunch of consultants that are out there going, oh, I could find out who's got the highest turnover, I could do a retention,
And we have a
pitch to
number of
them.
consulting advisory firms that are our clients for that reason.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
We have we even have a real estate company as a client. They use it in sales because they advise their clients, if you're going to go back to the office, where should you go? That kind of thing. So think about like labor market data drives a lot of decisions. And to your point, you mentioned I worked at Adecco, which later became Pontoon, the
Hunting.
RPO business. But I saw this datafication at the time. I thought I was making up a word. I called it the datafication of HR, but I think it kind of stuck. But I saw this kind of ongoing datafication of the human resources function where, there's still the art. There's always going to be the art when it comes to people. But they were increasingly relying on data to make decisions because decisions had consequences. This is kind of some of the business that you even know. Let's say that you wanted to invest $250,000 in a recruitment marketing program because you wanted to go into a certain market and you wanted to become an employer of choice. Imagine if you had some critical success factors that you identified as is this working, but like you accidentally went to Tallahassee as opposed to Boca Raton. I'm just like making up, right? You're gonna fail, not because the program was bad, you just picked the wrong market, right? So it's so obvious when I say it, right? But it wasn't obvious for a number of years, and companies are beginning to wake up to that and just like, we're speaking with a company now, Wild, right? They're like, hey, we need to understand the migration of labor because they hire hundreds of thousands of people, right? And if people are moving from one market to another market, or they're going from cities to suburbs, of suburbs to cities, like, why would we want to have a plan to build a new facility for 8,000 people if everybody's moving out of that area, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a $50 million miss. So this is like the power of having the right labor market data that's real time. This is kind of like what companies began to wake up to over the last couple of years.
Yeah. No, I could. Yeah. Brilliant, brilliant, absolutely brilliant. There's just so many different uses that could make the difference between profitability or bust on any particular project, right?
Yeah, and it's nice because it removes some of the intuition that has to go into making decisions, right? You'll never totally remove the intuition, but it basically de-emotionalizes the process. And that's like really important because I kind of made up this joke in the last 4 or 5 months. I said business is moving at the speed of now. Not at the speed of yesterday or last year. It's like everything has to happen at the speed of now.
Mhm.
So if your decision making isn't at the speed of now, then you're at a disadvantage. I mean, it's just that simple. If your decision making is relying on information from 2, 3 years ago, you're just at a disadvantage.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. And so where do you see your business ultimately going? Do you plan on being an aggregator of data or
Very Yeah,
is there something else that will take you 8 years in development because you have these big giant goals?
so I it's a great question. We are not going to spend a lot of time and money going down the data science path, which is interesting, but there are already firms that are solving that problem. Do you follow? Like, I don't really want to build a product where somebody else is already solving that problem. It's not interesting to me, and I don't think it offers a lot of value, because essentially, if something is already 90% solved, and if I make it 92% solved, it's really incremental benefit. But if something has like 5% solution and I bring an 80% solution, that creates like a lot of value. So what do I mean by that? There are companies have internal data science people that can take labor market data and their econometrics and all this other stuff, and they could create their own analysis. They don't need me to do that. And there are already firms like Talent Neuron and MC that have like 50 data scientists, and they pontificate and post reports and tell you all these really, really interesting things. So as a company, we're not going to go into that direction because there's already that out there. We're going to go much more on the creating metadata. And see, the data itself has not a lot of value. The metadata has the value. And so my goal is to like help people get access to the metadata so they can make the decisions. We don't really want to go down the path to say, here's a report, I'm smart, do what it tells you. That's not the direction I want to go. I want to say, here's the report of really accurate and relevant data. Now go run your business. Right?
Yeah.
This is kind of like the direction. So as our company grows, we will just look to bring in more data sources. We will look to create more metadata. We'll look to productize it so that it's consumable. Google, most people think of Google as a search box with 3 buttons, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's just the web-based manifestation. Google has an API business. Google has a cloud business. They have an analytics business, a trends business. This is the real Google. I mean, besides the advertising, of course, right? So I think I want to focus on usability of data, commercialization of the data, all this other stuff. These problems have not been solved by anyone. And so this is why, I'm excited to solve them, because I could go from a 5 to 10% solvable problem to like an 80% solvable problem, which creates a lot of value. So that's really going to be our direction: bring in more data, create more metadata, commercialize it, productize it, make it more usable, et cetera, et cetera.
And so what surprised you when you look at your customers? Because obviously it's easy to see human capital would be interested in. Have you had operations, CFOs, anybody that's come to you with a weird job title that says, oh yeah, this is what I need it for, and this is why?
We have clients that don't even use it for HR. That surprised me a lot.
Yeah.
We have one client that's a consulting advisory firm. They help companies relocate to Ireland. And they advise them on talent, location, cost, all this stuff. We have another client that's also a consulting and advisory firm that does competitive benchmarking. So they don't use it in an internal HR capacity. I already talked about a logistics and distribution client. We have a real estate client. This really is really interesting to see how labor market data is not just applicable for like recruiting and retention. It's applicable in other areas. But I really love to see, and because I'm like a product guy at heart, to be honest, I love to see the productization of Claro in other products. We have a very robust API business. And I love to see how other companies develop user experiences inside their product by using Claro data. It's really, really cool. You could go into, an HR analytics product, and there is Claro data embedded in that, and you wouldn't even know that it's Claro data. So I think that this is like very powerful, where I get excited about us becoming Intel Inside.
Mhm.
Essentially, when you get the stock market feeds and all these other things, you don't really think about it because it's like on a Yahoo page, but that comes from somebody. And so it's exciting to me to kind of see how companies are productizing, Claro Insights, and how they're developing really shared services around that, and delivering insights back to the business. So this was kind of surprising to me. I thought, like, recruiters would use it and stuff like that, but we kind of transcended past that relatively quickly, faster than I expected, to be honest. So.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I could see. Uh, yeah, I could just see some. Well, I'm guilty, right? I'm a marketing guy, so as soon as I see things like that, my head starts spinning. Like, well, these guys could use it. Those guys could use it. And yeah. So I love the fact that you're really focused on just making the data better. And not necessarily,
Accessible,
I'm not saying that your data is
predictable.
bad, just more accessible, better, embedded, right? And then giving it to access to through different partners that becomes more available,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly. Because I don't really want to build another academic institution. They already exist. There's so many smart labor market economists out there that, what am I going to do? Go hire them all? It just doesn't make any sense, right? What I'd rather do is give them access to unique insights so they could, develop their own theses and, and work based on that. And anyway, this is kind of like, it's a bit philosophical, but this is like philosophically, I as Clara, I'd love to create the most amount of value.
Yeah,
Uh, and I think the way that we could create the most amount of value is to continue to like focus what we're really good at. And not be ashamed, because Google built a multi-$100 billion business and it's a text box and 3 buttons.
mhm.
Like, they're definitely not winning user interface awards. You will never see Google in any user interface awards. Like, they're not even nominated, they're so bad, right? But at the end of the
Yeah,
day,
their product manager for user interface, it must be horrible, right?
no, but you understand what
Yeah,
I'm saying.
I
We
know, I
all,
know exactly. I was joking. Yeah.
it's like, but Gmail was like in beta for at least 12 years.
Mhm.
Right, you know what I'm saying? Because we use the full G Suite, and I say that with humility and humbleness, in that they focused on scale and it just works. Do you see what I mean? Because
Yeah,
ultimately, if you're going to run a business, you just want it to work.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And you don't want it to be something else that you have to dive into. You don't want to have to log in all the time to, pull this. You just want it
Yeah,
where you want it, right?
you want to be a destination where people come when they want to come, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so I became a student of Google and those types of firms that have built, Clay Christensen talk about disruptive technology, right? And I think 90% of the people use it so out of I actually almost went to work for him. He interviewed me for a job way back when, like, I was this close to working there. I'm not joking. He's in the Boston area. But most people don't realize, when he talked about disruptive technology, he actually talked about low tech, shitty software that's really cheap.
Mhm.
But today, if you go to LinkedIn, everybody's like, "Oh, this is the most disruptive product." They're trying to hype it up as it's revolutionary, it's amazing. It's so that no. When Quinn talked about it, he's like, no. It's cheaper, shittier, slower, but people
Yeah,
buy it.
yeah,
And this was like a good thing. So when I talk about Google as a disruptor, I mean in the literal definition of a disruptive technology. I mean, their user interface is literally a text box and 3 buttons.
yeah,
Like, literally, not metaphorically. And one of them says, "I feel," right.
yeah.
It's not
No,
even like a real button. Like, whoever presses, "I feel lucky." No one. So, and they're when you do that, you get like literally like TTY terminal results. Like, they're just like text.
Mhm,
Yet, it's the destination. Everybody starts their search there. Why? Because it was truly disruptive.
mhm.
It was simpler, not more complicated. It was faster. Do you follow? It was
Yeah.
free. So it's kind of wild, right? It was literally disruptive. So I became a student of this, David, and I love disruptive technology that makes things simpler.
Yeah. On talking about how simple that was, unrelated, my wife used to love the fact that when Microsoft came out with their Edge browser, the number one search on it was Google.
Google. No one searches Bing. It's like, hey, why don't you go Bing that? It's like, okay, people use Bing. I'm not throwing shade at them, but no one, I mean, Google became like an adjective, right?
Yeah, yeah, no, totally get it.
Well,
This is good. I love the update. Happy you shared it with you. Yeah, I'm gonna bug you because I think that there's a few instances that I know that some folks I work with that would probably love to have access to that. So for the people that watch us on recording, and of course it'll be in the links. It's the best way to get a hold of your website, all that sort of good stuff, Michael.
um, simple. The company's Claro Analytics, Claro Analytics, like just how it sounds. So it's just claroanalytics.com. Go there, check it out. We have like a contact us section there, and just ping us. We respond relatively quickly. Um, I would say something cool that we did, and you'll see it on our
Yeah.
website when you go. We built this tool called Job Seeking Sonar. It's free. It's a Chrome extension. You could download it. This is kind of like my way of giving back to society. It was really funny. So I use LinkedIn a lot, like every other business person. And it's super annoying. LinkedIn has no favorite feature. Like, how come a web browser has a bookmark, but LinkedIn has no? It's such a pain in the ass. Every time you have to go on LinkedIn, how do you find one? You have to literally search, and then you get
Mhm.
like random ass results. I always click the wrong buttons. I'm like, why doesn't LinkedIn have like a favorite feature? You could just save all your friends and you could go right to their profiles. So I'm like, damn it, we'll just build one. So you could download our Job Seeking Sonar. It's a Chrome extension. It's essentially a bookmark feature for LinkedIn, but it's like really useful. You could like have up to 100 people favorited. You favored the people. You could always jump to their profiles. When the people make updates, it like codes them green, so you could like, oh, my friend has an update. Let me click on them. So anyway, this is my
Okay.
shameless plug. It's totally free. There's no strings attached. You can go download the extension. It's really cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'll have to check that out. And
Yeah.
but yeah, this is good stuff, Michael. Congratulations on a vision that has come together. I'm sure there would have been some times along that journey where you entertained phone calls from others to and for career choices, and you stuck with it. So
Yeah, yeah. Temptation is a thing, right? It's like you really begin to see, what do you believe, where's your heart really lie? But yeah, um, it's been a great journey. I mean, I'm happy to chat with anybody else about it. Maybe we could reconnect some other time and talk about other stuff.
perfect. Hey, good speaking with you.
Cool.
Thanks,
Awesome.
Michael.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.